and welcome to Karen's Colours. I'm Dr. Karen and these are my colour conversations. This week, after a request from one of you, I'm going to be doing a colour analysis on the 1999 film Magnolia. Now, this is a film I hadn't seen before, and this is one I've had to see several times in order to fully digest both the content and also the colour. But firstly, I'd like to thank those of you who've been watching these videos. I hope they've been of some interest to you. And if you are enjoying them, please hit that like button just to indicate to YouTube that you like more of them. If you're new here, you are doubly welcome. You might consider also sitting through and liking this video. And if you're so inclined, a subscription would be nice. It's free, but it's not mandatory. So let's get started. In order to understand the film Magnolia, I need to read a few of the items that I have discovered in my research. I have paraphrased part of the offerings by a commentator named Robert Ebert. Magnolia is a film of sadness and loss, of lifelong bitterness, of children harmed and adults destroying themselves. In this wreckage of lifetimes, there are two figures, a policeman and a nurse, who do what they can to offer help, hope, and love. The central theme is cruelty to children and its lasting effect. The way the sins of the parents are visited on the children, how so many people lead lives of desperation, how a few try to help is closely linked to a loathing of or fear of behaving as society expects us to. This pretty much sums up the film. But Wikipedia has more to say. It says that this film is an epic mosaic of interrelated characters in search of happiness, forgiveness, and meaning. Magnolia received positive reviews, with critics praising its acting, direction, screenplay, storytelling, and its soundtrack. And as a result of this film, Tom Cruise was nominated for Best Supporting Actor at an Academy Award and won that award at the Golden Globes. The audience reactions, on the other hand, were somewhat mixed. Looking at two extremes, one audience member stated that it was boring and too hard to follow, whereas at the other end of the spectrum, another audience member said that this was one of the greatest films of all time, legendary and perfect. Well, my reaction is slightly different. I don't agree with either audience member. It's an interesting film and you need to pay attention in order to establish all of its nuances. Certainly it's a great film, but neither legendary or perfect. It leaves an uncomfortable feeling about human frailty and the all too frequent inability to overcome human failings. The film explores themes of coincidences, which are actually synchronicities, and uses a child prodigy television show called What Do Kids Know as its unifying theme. So let's begin. There are several intersecting storylines in this film. The first one involves Jim Curring, a policeman who wants to do good. The second story involves Phil Farmer, a male nurse wanting to comfort his dying patient. And their stories intersect through the child prodigy show and its presenter, Jimmy Gator. So let's now meet the main protagonists in the cast. And I present them here in the order in which they appear in the film itself. This is Jim Curring, Frank Mackey, Claudia Wilson Gator, Stanley Spector, Rick Spector, Donnie Smith, Phil Farmer, Earl Partridge, Linda Partridge, Jimmy Gator, Dixon, and Rose Wilson Gator. These 12 characters are the ones that primarily keep the storylines going and link them together within the film. But in order to understand this film, we need to examine the various plot links between the characters. Firstly, Jim Curring is one story and Phil Farmer the lead in the other story. Jim Curring meets Dixon, a young man who gives him information that he ignores. He also meets Claudia Wilson Gator, who is a girl that he falls in love with. Phil Farmer is looking after Earl Partridge and also, to a secondary extent, with his wife Linda Partridge. Earl has a son called Frank Mackey, whom Phil contacts at Earl's request. Earl Partridge was the producer of the television show, which is presented on the air by Jimmy Gator. Jimmy had a previous child prodigy who is now grown up, named Donnie Smith, and the current prodigy is Stanley Spector, whose father, Rick Spector, is doing it to Stanley exactly what Donnie Smith's parents did to him, and that is to live off the child's money, leaving him destitute as an adult. Jimmy Gator is the father of Claudia Wilson, and he is married to Rose Wilson Gator. Dixon meets Linda Partridge after her suicide attempt and is instrumental in saving her life. As well as this, Jim Curring also meets Donnie Smith when he is committing a crime and trying to effect restitution for that crime. And towards the end of the film, we also have the intervention of a frog fall rather than a rainfall. The entire film had been associated with rain, and now it was a storm of frogs falling from the sky. And these frogs intimately affect the lives of some of these characters. For a start, they're responsible for the ambulance crash that almost kills Linda Partridge. It causes Jim Curring to slew off the road as he's trying to contact Donnie Smith and prevent him from committing a crime. It causes Rose Wilson Gator to crash as well as she's trying to contact her daughter, Claudia Wilson. And most importantly, the frogs actually intervene in Jimmy Gator's own suicide attempt, thereby preventing him from shooting himself. Finally, the only character in the film who is not associated with fear or some sort of harm as a result of the frog fall is Stanley Spector, who indeed quite welcomes the incident and appears to be totally unaffected by it. Now, there are a number of colour analysis issues that we need to deal with. Firstly, the film is shot in dim light, mostly at night and in semi-darkness, and rain is prominent. All of this impinges on the visibility of the colours, and that alters the colour perception. There is very little colour used throughout the film as a result of all of this darkness, and frequent short scene flashes limit the colour recognition. The most environmental colour is black, and if the clothing colour is not clear, it is linked as a black ambience. Because the film swings from scene to scene, sometimes only in flashes, sometimes for prolonged sequences, the colours often remain the same, and so these are not counted as separate sequences. All in all, white is the most common colour as such, seen in the costumes of people, and it occurs 16 times. Blue is seen 15 times, brown 13, green 10, black and red both 8 times each, pink and orange 3 times each, grey twice, and purple once. So let's now examine these in the sequence of their frequency. The most common colour is white, and here we see an association with truths that are being uncovered. The first image is that of the parents of the suicide murder victim that begins the film as a way of introducing the theme of coincidences. Rick is driving a white car as he blames Stanley for his own lateness. Donnie also drives a white car as he crashes his way into work, again being late. Earl's dying declarations and wishes are shown as he lies in a white bed as well as wearing white clothing. Linda's frantic state in trying to get some sort of assistance for Earl is also associated with white curtains and a white gown. Jim's attempt at self-improvement is seen as he wears a white tee. Linda's doctor, giving advice about what to do once Earl has passed, is also wearing a white shirt. And Rose's concern about Jimmy's health is associated with a white gown. When Frank disrobes in front of the female reporter, he's seen parading in a pair of white jocks. The pharmacist's concerns about the quantity and variety of Linda's prescription drugs are also associated with the colour white. When Claudia succumbs to the lure of drugs, she uses a white candle to heat up the medication. When Donnie is getting prepared to rob his ex-employer, he's wearing a white shirt. And when Jimmy is faced with Rose's rejection of his excuses for his behaviour, he too is wearing a white shirt. Linda is taken to hospital in an ambulance and covered in white sheets on the gurney. And when Earl's body is taken away, as well as that of his dog, they are both draped in white. Finally, when Stanley demands better care for himself from Rick, he's wearing a white undershirt. So what does this tell us about white? In each case, there are links to sudden awakening to truths that aren't wanted or particularly liked. The protagonists are facing tough realities, and the consequences of previous actions are imminent. There is an opportunity to change direction, but will it be taken? We need to look further into the colour analysis to see if this is the case. The next most prominent colour is blue, and here we have links to an exposure to reality. The first blue we see is the sky behind a scuba diver, also clad in blue, high up in a tree. That same blue is very faintly seen in a suicide preparing to jump, and also in the uniforms of the policemen investigating that suicide turned murder. Jim's self-appraisal of his deficits sees him wearing a blue undershirt, and Phil's reception of Earl's secrets are accompanied by Phil's wearing of a pale blue uniform. When Phil is searching for Frank, that uniform is still there, although the blue now looks more grey. When Donnie is sacked, he's wearing a blue shirt and a blue vest and is seated in a blue-coloured room. And the blue light that indicates Stanley's pre-game anxiety permeates the entire studio. As we can see here, with Jimmy drinking before he goes out to compare the show. Blue is also prominent when Claudia hesitates over her upcoming date with Jim, and when Jim is contemplating that same date with Claudia. When Linda overdoses in her car, all we see is a dim blue-lit face. Similarly, that same blue light occurs as Frank is gathering up courage, sitting in his car, waiting to face Earl. And again, back home, young Stanley contemplates his future in a blue room. And finally, as Donnie is emptying out the contents of his previous boss's vault, he's wearing a blue cap and is situated in a blue-grey room. What does that tell us about blue in this film? There is a link to seeking or receiving of information in order to effect some sort of action. Contemplation of the outcome of an impending or past action is also one of the characteristics of blue, as is self-talk to overcome fears. And now we have brown. This is associated with surrender to various different challenges. The first time we see Phil, who is preparing to take on Earl's case, he's wearing a brown jacket. The reporter who comes to interview Frank is wearing a brown overcoat. Stanley is doing his duty, according to Rick's demands, wearing a brown jacket. Claudia's failed attempt at sobriety from drugs is associated with a brown room. As Frank readies himself for his interview, he puts on a brown jacket. Donnie seems oblivious to the brown-wearing waitress who is making overtures towards him. And as young Dixon is watching a TV show wearing a brown jacket as well, he is chosen by an unnamed male for unknown purposes. When Frank answers Phil's call about Earl, he's still wearing that same brown jacket, and Jim also dons a brown jacket when he collects Claudia for their date. When Frank sits with and confronts Earl on his deathbed, he's still wearing that same brown shirt. Rose, driving away from home to make amends with Claudia, is wearing a brown top. And the first frogs that fall from the sky are also coloured brown. And Rose, protecting Claudia from the frog fall, is seen with that same brown coat again. So what does brown tell us? There is determination to carry out an action. It requires overcoming of fears, uncertainties, and anxieties in order to achieve a desired outcome. And the person wearing the brown is protecting themselves by acquiescing to the inevitable, but doing so in a manner that makes them feel in charge. And now let's move to green. Here we see Dixon wearing a green coat as he is surviving on the streets. Donnie is also wearing a green coat as he watches and yearns for the love of the barman. The reporter interviewing Frank sits in a green chair as she challenges Frank's history. Rick, at the studio, boasting about Stanley's prowess, is sitting in a green room. When Jimmy collapses on stage, he falls onto a green carpet. Frank, refusing to respond to the journalist, also sits in a green chair. When Rose uncovers Jimmy's secrets about his affairs, she's wearing a green top. And when Jimmy denies knowledge of the problems with Claudia, he also is wearing a green jacket. Similarly, Jim confessing his failings to Claudia is associated with a green shirt, and that same green shirt without the jacket is seen again as he persists in his relationship with Claudia, which finishes the film. Green is all about adjusting to new information and experiences. It displays the innermost emotional state and values of the person who's wearing that colour, and it also allows for the digesting of evidence in order to respond to a new challenge. And now we get to the most pervasive colour in terms of the cinematography, but not one that is worn terribly often by the people in the film itself. Here we have black as the primary colour worn by Frank on his televised advertising of his mission to conquer women. Claudia's self-prostitution and drug addiction are associated with her black clothing. Frank's performance on stage to indicate his dominance is associated with a shiny black vest. When Jimmy goes to visit Claudia for some form of restitution, he is soundly rejected, and he's also wearing black. When Claudia is hiding her addiction when she first meets Jim, she's also wearing black, as is Linda, who is desperate to get the solicitor to change Earl's will so that she does not inherit, as she is no longer a gold digger. The solicitor, also clad in black, of course, cannot comply. And when Dixon finds the unconscious Linda in her car, he too is wearing black. So black tells us that there are themes of things that are done under cover of darkness, and it hints at secrets and fears of exposure. It permits confusion and obfuscation, and it links to tragedy, sadness, and betrayal. Our next colour is red. This is all about evidencing some form of dominance. The child witness at the murder-suicide scene is giving information that is of vital importance to the police. Jimmy's trophy photograph sees him wearing red as he holds up one of his prizes. Stanley's televised quiz challenge has him in a red top as well. The rich man rivaling Donnie for the barman's attention is also wearing a red jacket. And it's interesting to note that red, being the opposite of green, which is the colour that Donnie is wearing, indicates the struggle in colour form. Stanley's teammate has an argument with the adults after their team loses. When Claudia goes on her date with Jim, we can see trims of red in her costume. And later on, as she recovers from the shock of the frog fall damaging the windows of her apartment, we can see that she's also wearing red. And when Donnie falls from the ladder after attempting restitution for the robbery, he breaks his new braces and bloodies his face, covering himself and his clothing in red. So red is all about standing up for the self and for what is considered to be right. There are evidences of past triumphs and current triumphs, and the response to new challenges are all associated with this colour. Of a much less prominent degree is the colour pink. And here we see the protagonists coping with vulnerability. Claudia rejects her father in a pink room. Dixon is surrounded by pink buildings as he hustles for money. And when Rose discovers that Jimmy has abused Claudia, she's also wearing pink. As there is limited information, there is a limited analysis for this colour. Nevertheless, in each case, pink indicates a retreat from perceived threats and a form of bargaining, either with someone else or with themselves. Similarly, the colour orange has a limited exposure. And here we have crisis in play. Jimmy's inability to continue with comparing the show is indicated by flashes of orange in the background. When Linda erupts emotionally over Phil's contact with Frank, she's also within an orange-coloured room. And Donnie, psyching himself up for the upcoming robbery, is seen as himself gathering courage from looking at an orange-surrounded mirror. The issues with orange are all about some crisis that is happening right now and is inevitable. The person cannot escape what they are about to do or what is about to happen to them. Even less frequent is the colour grey, and this one has to do with hidden agendas. When Linda is seeking medication, it's not just for Earl's benefit, it's also because she wants medication for herself. And the barman, wearing grey, whilst prepared to respond to the flirtatious advances of all comers in his bar, nevertheless keeps his own desires completely hidden. And finally, we have the colour purple, which only occurs once, yet is one of the colours that is associated with magnolias. Here we see, close to the beginning of the film, a woman who is determined to control the situation that she finds herself in, which of course is that she's hiding a corpse in her closet. She's wearing a purple gown and is extremely vocal. But that doesn't give us much information to go on. So let's summarize the colour information in this film. White has to do with unavoidable truths. Blue with communicating within and outside of the self. Brown is all about facing and overcoming challenges, whereas green is putting personal values to the test. Black is about secrets and things that are hidden from others, whereas red is acknowledging and using personal power. For pink, we have vulnerability and the seeking of safety. Orange is involved in a crisis situation. Grey keeps motivation secret. And purple is about attempting to control an overwhelming situation. Successfully or not? Well, in this case, it was a not. So that's it for this film. Not a great deal of information that the colour allows us to have, but there is sufficient in this dark film in order for us to ascertain lots of the motivations of the individual characters. I hope you've enjoyed this particular presentation and will join me for the next one. I haven't decided what that film is going to be yet, but if you have a suggestion, please put it in the notes below, because I'm more than happy to look at your favourite film. But until next time, may colour permeate your life and bring you joy and happiness. See you then. Bye.